the synagogue, so I just needed it. I needed a change.
What is that? A poster you have up?
No, it's a virtual background. You can just click on where the video is, and it does it.
Where
Have
are
different
you now?
options.
Where are you now, Shelley?
In outer space.
Yeah.
On
Mars, with the new Mars rover.
Exactly. I'm on my way. On my way.
They landed. They
I was
landed
always-
on Mars.
I was always going to say you're out of space all the time, but I didn't want to say that.
Some days more than others, Neil.
There's Bailey.
Yeah.
You.
You're live.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom to our family.
Shalom, Carol.
Honey,
Carol,
Jessica.
Jessica,
Shabbat Shalom.
Lauren,
here, Marty.
and Bailey.
And Lauren is waving. Look at me! Oh, yeah, look at the dog.
Lenny,
Betsy.
fighting a good face.
Hi, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Orange in space too.
Or he's got
This is
this.
Lauren's dog.
I got taken out to Mars.
Oh, you're up there too.
Yeah, wow, floating in space.
Yeah, that's, there was a story about a kid in, one of his Zoom classes, and he created a fake background that was actually a video of him making it look like he was paying attention and nodding to what the teacher was saying. And in reality, so everything I saw is like, this kid should automatically be graduated, goes right to college, the smartest one out of all of us. It's great. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. As you can see, I'm in a slightly different venue, as most of you, bundled up at home. But now I get to, I was saying to Cantor Lauren, I think I'm the only rabbi that I know over the last year, the first time I'm leading a service for Shabbat from home, which is pretty remarkable. But in any case, forgive me for the inevitable muting of all, which I have to do. There we go. Oh, it's so quiet now. And I'm going to put myself and Cantor Lauren up on our spotlight. It's great to see you, Cantor Lauren. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
Good. Well, let's start by congratulating you. Okay, for those of you that had a chance to watch on Wednesday your incredible practicum at HUC, and just so those that had missed it and wanted to watch it, the link that was sent out, we're pretty sure the link that was sent out earlier in the week to watch on Vimeo should now take you directly to a recording of that. So you can go and watch whenever you want to. Maybe not during services right now, but whenever you want to after the fact. It's a great way to spend your Shabbat. But Lauren, you did a fantastic job. And certainly, as I told you, our whole Sag Harbor community was with you in really every part of that experience. We wish we could have been there in person. And all I can just tell all of you, which I've tried to say as best as I can, when you hear Lauren eventually in person, no matter what the recording is, it doesn't even come close to comparing to what it is in real life. So I feel very selfish in the fact that I'm like the only person that's got to hear it so far in real life, but it was really, truly remarkable. So we thank you for sharing your experience with us and giving us an opportunity to be part of it. And we really feel, again, very privileged that every Shabbat we get to enjoy this experience with you. So kol hakavod lach, that all of the honor should go to you, and may it only continue from here. And next year, when you have your next round of it, we'll be there as well. And really, again, just mazel tov to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're going to welcome up Julie and Barbara, who are going to help us to light and bless our candles. So Julie, let me just get to your area here, and we'll add the spotlight. Now, just make sure you unmute first so we can hear you. Okay. And we're on page 120.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
Are you, Adonai, our God?
sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Amen. And I have to say, just again, to acknowledge the small miracles of life, right? When you guys moved to Vermont, we used to have you light candles like all the time at shul, and knowing that we weren't going to be able to do that again, and now we get to do that. And the second thing I just said to get to Lauren before, on a night like this, we may not have even had services because of the weather. So to be able to have services tonight is miraculous. So let's all start in certainly a good place in that way. And Julian Barber will send you back to your space, and you can rest and relax. Cantor Lauren, maybe you can help to start us off tonight with something, get us moving in the right direction.
Great. We're going to be on page 128. Yedi nefesh ha'rachamon, Yedi nefesh ha'rachamon, Meshochatecha, El retzonecha, Meshochatecha,
We'll turn now to page 130, Lechu Neranena, at the very top of the page.
Lechu neranena l'Adonai, nari'a letzori sheinu, nekanma fanav betoda, bizmirot nari'a lo, nekanma fanav betoda, bizmirot nari'a lo.
We're now on page 131, Shiru Ladonai, the very top of the Hebrew in the middle of the page.
All right, we're going to do the same thing that we did last week, so I hope you sing along. Shiru Ladonai shir chadash, Shiru Ladonai kol haaretz, Shiru Ladonai baruchu shemo, Batru miyom liyom Yeshuato, Sapru v'goyim kivono, Bechol ha'amim niflatav, Ki gadol Adonai u'me'olad me'od, Lo ra'u al kol Elohim, Ki kol Elohei ha'amim elilim, Adonai shamayim asa, Ad me'adol lifanav, Oz v'tiferet b'mikdasho, Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, Shiru l'Adonai baruchu shemo, Basru miyom le'yom Yeshuato.
We turn now to page 132, Or Zarua, towards the bottom of the page in Hebrew.
Or Zarua l'tzadik, u'le'yisrael lev simcha. Or Zarua l'tzadik, u'le'yisrael lev simcha. Simchu tzadikim Adonai, Behodu lezecher kodsho. Simchu tzadikim Adonai, Behodu lezecher kodsho.
We turn now to page 134.
Zamru l'Adonai mechino, bechino.
We'll turn now to the bottom of the Hebrew on page 135, which is really more middle of the page, Romamu.
Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'yishachavu le'hakoshu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'yishachavu le'hakoshu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'yishachavu le'har kodsho.
We'll turn now to page 138 for Lecha Dodi, and just a reminder again that we'll do the first, second, fifth, and ninth paragraphs.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad tishmi'anu el hamuchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shemu tiferet v'tchila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu b'nei echad ki mekor haberacha lerosh mikadem nesucha. Sof ma'aseh b'machshavat tchila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri ki ba'orech u'mi'uri shir daveri. Kevod Adonai alai nifila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Ori v'shalom ateret ba'ala gam b'simcha v'tzola. Toch emunei am segula. Borichala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela.
And we'll turn now to page 140.
Mizmor shir leyom haShabbat tov lehodol ונזמר לשמך היום, נזמר לשמך היום. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני. נזמר לשמך היום, נזמר לשמך היום. להגיד בבוקר חסדך, לאמונתך בעלילות. הלב עזור מעלי נבט, הלב היון לכינור. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני. ונזמר לשמך היום, ונזמר לשמך עליון. צדיק אתה יפרח, כארז בלבנון ישגה. שתולים בבית אדוני, מחתרות אלוהינו יפריחו. עוד ינובו בשיבה, תשני ברעננים יהיו. להגיד כי ישר אדוני צורי, מלוב לתמו.
We turn now to the Chatzi Kaddish on page 140.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בלמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם על מעלמיה יתמרח. יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם וינשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי קודשה בריחו, לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירם בעלמה, ויאמרו אמן.
We turn now to page 146 for the Baruch Hu.
Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Baruch Hu Adonai, HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai, HaMevorach, Le'olam va'ed, Le'olam va'ed.
We'll turn now together to page 149. We'll read in English at the very top of the page. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows.
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המריב הרבים, אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אתה. תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו למדת. Alkeinu Adonai Eloheinu, Beshochenu vekumeinu, Nasiach bechurecha, V'nismach medivrei Toratecha, Uvemitzvotecha, Leolam Vaed, Ki hem chayenu, Me'orach yameinu, Uvahem negeh yomam v'layla, Me'ahavtecha, Al tasir mimenu le'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Please join me on page 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol lebavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'elem asher anochi metzavcha hayom al levavecha ve'shinantam levanecha ve'dibarta bam ve'shiftecha b'veitecha u'b'lechtecha b'derech U'shachbecha ufkumecha, U'shartam leot al yadecha, Ve'hayu letotafot beinecha, U'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, U'vihi sharecha. Leman tiskevu v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, V'item kedoshim le'Elohechem, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihot lachem Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. Let's read together on the top of page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. As we turn to page 158, Mi Chamocha. We'll turn now to the very top of page 161.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship
We'll turn now to page 162. In just a moment, the cantor will help us to begin the Amidah on page 164, and then as always, we will continue at our own pace silently. Just a reminder, we're trying to give as much space as we realistically can for each of us to pray on our own. So this might be longer than you need, it might be even potentially shorter than you need, but if it's the longer, take the time that you have to use this time well. In other words, meditate, read something from the book, do something positive, hug the person next to you, but don't worry that the screen hasn't frozen or anything like that. It's part of the gig. So, Cantor Lauren, if you wouldn't start us off again on page 164, and then we'll continue silently and come back in a few minutes.
Open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Adonai tzuri megoli, yehiyu leratzon imlefi, ve'yon livi, yehiyu leratzon imlefi,
We'll turn now to page 371 as we offer our Misha Berach, our prayer for healing. And in a moment, I'll read our healing list for the temple. I invite those at home who are sharing names, certainly to share those names in chat if you so choose. But I ask all of us tonight to be thinking of our brothers and sisters, certainly in Texas and in many parts of the country, who are really suffering quite terribly right now. And so we hope and pray both for those that are already affected in one form or the other, and we hope that the ongoing nature of it will end soon. But certainly, our hearts and our minds are directed south tonight. But in our community, connected to our community, we're thinking first of Brianne Matloff, Boris Senderovich, Rachmiel Ben Hinda, Paloma Xiao Juan, Samuel Moskowitz, Audrey Lubo, Evie Romano, Chaim Leib, Andrew Edelman, Robert Posner, and Joyce Weinberg, Rick Gold, Stu Pollack, Jane London, Phyllis Silver, Catherine Guarino, Emuna Chava, Sandra Furman, Raina Walsh, Deirdre Klein, Stephanie Skitt, Judy Stern, Miriam Cornfield, Raz Brody, Hannah Ruth Batsara, Marlise Silverberg, Susan Spruce, Fagel Tzipora Bat Elisheva Bat Sarah, Richard Gambino, Michelle Sawicki, Idol Basha Bat Yitzchak, Tzvi Menachem Ben Chaim, Rivka Bat Devora, Amy and Gavin Tucker, Janice Kurz, David Dowling, Neil Elliott and Eileen Rosen, Israel Ben Yitzchak, Ben Sion Ben Moshe, Lorraine Danis, Buddy Kosoff, Shelley Newmark, David Kyle Klopman, Rivka Bat Rachel, Sarah Bat Chana, Moshe Eliezer Ben Sivia, Peretz Ben Yehuda, and Leah Bat Naomi. And as we think of those also added to the chat and those that we are holding on our hearts, we'll turn to Cantor Lauren to offer our Misha Berach again on page 371.
Who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen.
Thank you, Cantor Lauren. We'll give you a little bit of a break. We'll bring you back in just a little bit, but Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So this weekend in Shul, we're going to be reading from Parshat Truma. And Parshat Truma represents really the beginning of what is a 5-part series, very interconnected and very related. Even though all Torah is connected and all related, you really have to understand each of the next 5 parshas in relationship to each other. They carry us all the way to the end of the book of Exodus and to the beginning of the book of Leviticus. And the primary function of this week's parsha and really these next 5 weeks is focused on one major task, major undertaking, which is the building of the Mishkan, which we've talked about many times over the years. And as I pointed out, the original name of our synagogue before it was Adas Israel, or Adat Israel, was Mishkan Israel. The name of our prayer book is Mishkan Tefillah. It is an important word for us. It is the prototype of the eventual temple, which becomes a prototype of every synagogue and temple that's ever been created. And it is really the first sacred building project of the Jewish people, not even the Jewish people at that point, of our ancestors in the desert. So it's a remarkable story, one of which, again, as I said, is sort of a 5-part series in which the first 2 parshas this week and next, we learn basically the instructions for the building of the Mishkan. The last 2 portions, we learn about the actual building of, and the ignoble middle ground is where the golden calf takes place. In other words, between the period of time in which there is an instruction to build and between when it is built, we get one of the lower points in our history. And so, as I said, you really have to understand all of them ultimately together. But we're going to start tonight from a fairly simple place, which is from this week's Parsha alone, from Truma, and from its original idea, its word. Truma is a gift, but in particular, a gift that our tradition tells us is given freely. And that really the concept behind the Mishkan was that on the one hand, yes, there may have been some taking of necessary goods from here and there, but primarily it's a building that is built off of love. It is built from voluntary gifts from the various people, from the lowest to the highest, from the most financially able to the least. And ultimately speaking, our tradition understands that the Mishkan could not have been built in any other fashion and needed to be built in this kind of way. But while we talk in those sort of grand terms, if you were to open the parsha at its beginnings and read the first several pasukim, really chapter and a half, 2 chapters, it really is a very detailed instruction set. For anybody who's ever been involved in building anything, it's an early form of not just a blueprint, but really a whole build out, right? All the materials that are necessary, the order in which they're meant to be conceived of. And of course, on a higher level, right, we're not just talking about building somebody's home or building an office building. We're talking about building a place that is known for one purpose and one purpose only, to be, right? Mishkan tells you in the root, it's a residence or residing place for the Shekhinah, for a sort of undefinable, unending sort of essence of God that is meant to reside amongst and between and with all of the people. So as you can imagine, it's a building project that is built with a lot of excitement and at the same time a little bit of trepidation, because the instructions are not instructions where if you wanted to build it a little bit bigger by a couple of cubits, or maybe use a different color pattern, or maybe use a different material set, that isn't happening here. Okay, these instructions are to the letter, and if they are violated, they can bring bad things to come as a result of it. So I want to focus on one aspect of the building, which, again, these pasukim, these verses are very easy sometimes to read past in the minutia of it all. You get sort of lost in the details, but the details really matter a great deal. So in the 15th verse of chapter 25, we're told in Hebrew, "B'taba'ot ha'aron yiyu habadim lo yasuru mimenu." So ultimately speaking, when they're building the ark that is meant to hold the tablets of the covenant, what we understand to be, again, God-given to Moshe, to the people, the prototype of an eventual understanding of basically the Torah as we refer to it. All of our ideas all coalesced into this sacred text, which again, originally written on stone and eventually put down, as we know, on vellum and created the Torah that we are most familiar with. But the idea of the ark is that it was the housing place of the most sacred of our text, the most sacred text in existence at that point. And so, of course, there's a lot of detail about how this ark is meant to be built and what it's meant to be built out of and adorned. But in this verse, we're told basically something really odd. We're told that basically the way that it was carried is it would have a bunch of rings, and through those rings would be a large pole, And on either side, 2 sets of people, I think it's 3 on either side, were meant to lift up and carry this very heavy, very adorned box. And it's not so dissimilar from many ways in which people were carried, what's called a palanquin, in which you have somebody carried in a box sort of by servants who are carrying them along. So that part is not so unusual, right? The mechanism for carrying, remembering again, the Mishkan has to be broken down and carried with it. So it makes sense that the Aron should be something that's, again, built in an ornate fashion, but also built in a practical fashion and one that can be carried. But the idea generally is that you build it with these rings and these poles so that the poles can be removed, and so you have less of an obstruction of the item itself. And other parts of the Mishkan, we're told, you can take the poles out without any problem. Okay, but in this case, we're told the poles shall remain in the rings of the ark and they shall not be removed from it. Okay, so this again is not just a passing reference. The idea is basically that these pole arms are meant to be stuck within the rings in perpetuity. They are never to be removed. Okay, so what is this about? Again, seems like a fairly simple kind of concept. So let's dive into it a little bit. So going from Sefer HaChinuch, which is the collection of one of the sort of core collections of the mitzvot, of a book in which, in other words, if you're trying to figure out what are the 613 mitzvot, Sefer HaChinuch is the one that you pick up. It will list them out 1 to 613, and you will get an explanation as to where they come from and why. So it explains this mitzvah as follows. It says, among the roots of this mitzvah, since the ark is the dwelling place of the Torah, and it is our essence and glory, and we have been obligated to treat it with all due respect and splendor to the best of our ability, therefore we have been commanded not to remove the poles of the ark, lest it become necessary for us to quickly go out somewhere with the ark. And perhaps owing to the trouble and the haste, we would not properly check that the poles are as strong as necessary, and perhaps, God forbid, it would fall from their hands. And this is obviously not in keeping with honoring it. But since they are always set in it and never removed from it, we will make them very strong, and there will be no mishap with them. So that's one possibility. Another reason is that the form of each of the vessels of the mikdash, of this sacred space, must allude to great supernal matters, so that a person should be moved for the good when he thinks about them. And God wanted for our own benefit that it should not lose its form even for a short time. Okay, so what is the Sefer HaChinuch talking about? Is a rather practical matter, at first at least, which is, first of all, you're building a temporary structure in the first place. It's meant to be collapsed and taken with. So the idea is, God forbid, right, somebody happens to be chasing after you, you don't have a lot of time, you're not careful with it, right? One guy doesn't put the pole all the way through properly, they go to lift it, and what happens? The ark should fall. And obviously, should that fall, a great disaster befalls all of us. Okay, but the Sefer HaChinuch goes a little bit further and says, well, it's not just about that there is also a symbolic nature to this, which is that God didn't want us to ever think that the idea of the Torah is that it should be fixed in one particular place. Okay, and that there should always be a sign and a symbol that when the Jewish people needs to move, the Torah moves with us, that it's never going to be fixed, even when it's in the temple, that there is an element of this to teach us that it shouldn't be fixed in that way. And from this idea, Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, which if you don't know the name, as one of the most significant rabbis of certainly the modern era, almost modern era, one of the great minds considered to be sort of the progenitor of what we would call modern orthodoxy. And he writes extensively in many different ways and many different commentaries. The Hirsch Chumash is still one of the most studied Chumashim that you can find. But so he says the following. He says, the poles and the meaning of the carrying the ark symbolically represent the command and the mission to carry the ark and its contents, and if it becomes necessary, away from the precincts of its present position. The command that these means of transport may never be lacking is to emphasize in our minds that the fact that from the very beginning, it must be made clear that this Torah and its mission is in no way bound to the place or existence at any time of the Mikdash itself. In other words, the Mikdash is the temple, and just as I said, there is a deeper message here, that while on the one hand, we hope and pray and understand that the idealized version of the story, the place in which the ark is meant to rest in the temple in Yerushalayim, has not been the case for our people for a very long time. In fact, almost as much of our history without it being in that place as otherwise. And in fact, in many instances, we did have to leave under duress, right? We did have to leave in a circumstance in which there wasn't a lot of time to consider, are we going to bring the lampstand and the dolphin skins and the structure of the Mishkan, right? Those things, those are secondary concerns. They are beautiful, they're important, However, should all of that stuff disappear, should the Mikdash disappear, should the temple disappear, the Jewish people do not disappear, precisely because our Torah was never intended to be fixed in that kind of way. It may be a drawing point for all of us, right? Being in Yerushalayim is a drawing point for us. We need to have that mentality and understand the centrality of what Yerushalayim is to our people. But we run a danger when we consider the idea of Torah to be fixed, even in space and time. That the idea of Torah actually, in the same way as God, exists beyond the sort of normal constraints that we have about many, many ideas, not just within Judaism, but as human people and human beings. And I think that these messages, this message about always having the poles in the rings ready to go, is a reminder to each and every one of us of our obligation, right? That each of us is an inheritor of the Torah. We are meant to see through this story to imagine ourselves as the ones who were carrying the ark. And we have to be ready at any moment to carry the Torah forward and to reach out and to do with it that which is intended, right? To make sure that whatever we do, and I'll borrow a phrase from one of our favorites, Ruth Joseph, who is one of our great teachers here at the temple, and she once said to be very careful that we don't make the Torah into something, a piece of art that we hang on a wall, that we walk past from time to time and we admire in a fixed place, right? The Torah is a living, breathing, moving idea. And we, each of us, we are, again, both the inheritors and the protectors, and ultimately the teachers of that Torah. And so we symbolically, figuratively, even if the ark itself is lost for time, even if this particular mitzvah has no direct physical application in our lives right now, it may actually be one of the most important commandments that we should be thinking about, especially right now. And I think what we are doing tonight is an example of precisely this. And as I said, sort of jokingly, but not so jokingly, this was a night in which, again, we probably wouldn't have been able to gather in the temple, right? We wouldn't have been able to be in that space. There are going to be times where our idealized versions of practicing Judaism aren't possible. And so it's important to understand that whatever we do with this, right, the flexibility to adjust and to accommodate different changes in our reality, we're not doing something in countervalence to our tradition or to what our ancestors expected of us or what God expects of us. We're doing precisely what it is that God expects of us, right? This instruction to our ancestors in the desert is still pertinent and relevant to us today. And so our charge for tonight and for this Parshat Truma, which I'll remind everybody the word means gift, is to figure out what is your Jewish gift that you need to bring out into the world right now. Okay, you are ready to go. You've got the pole in the rings. Okay, for those of us that were on the call last night, for example, with our Chug Briut, okay, that is an example of precisely what we're talking about, right? Don't rest on the sidelines when you have something that can help others. Torah takes many, many, many forms, but especially right now is the time we have to really be on the move. Maybe not physically, right, but spiritually. We need to be reaching out to each other, reaching out to others, carrying that Torah forward. And I think this is a great series of parshas, a great series of periods of time to really contemplate these ideas and really ask ourselves, what does the Torah mean to us? How do we revere it and protect it? And ultimately speaking, how do we bring it out into the world? And our answers may be different, but our goal should be the same, to continue to ensure that the Torah is an Eitz Chaim, a living tree of life, and that we share the bounties of that tree of life with all of those that share our traditions and our worldview and our wonderful experience of Judaism. So with that, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, and I hope that in whatever way that I carried the Torah out tonight, that it hit you in a meaningful way. And I hope maybe we can study a little bit more together for Torah study tomorrow. That's another good way to bring Torah out into the world for sure. So at this point, I'll bring Cantor Lauren back into the space, and we're going to turn to page 586 at the bottom of the page. Aleinu l'shabeach. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol latet kedula le'yotzer breshit ve'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama shelo sam chelkenu kahem ve'gor aleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech Malachei Hamlachim Hakadosh Baruch Hu. We're on page 591. V'nehemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu Yeh Adonai Echad. Ushemo, Shemo, Ushemo Echad. And I'll now invite those who are in mourning and observing yahrzeit to rise in body or spirit, as first we think of those who've passed in our community in recent months. Miles Ambrose, Fred Eber, Nancy Fisher, Saul Fisher, Edwin Friedman, Sandra Friedman, Lucy Gladstone, Lois Herr, Phyllis Katz, Laura Kurz, Madge Judith Parcher, Steve Popkin, Vera Shaps, Norma Small, Marjorie Weinberg Berman, and Ann Weiss. We also marked the yahrzeits that occurred during the last week for Vala Amsterdam, Sam Berman, Muriel Fearman, Ira Flesh, Rose Goldberg, Barry Goodstadt, Sarah Harkaveh, Mildred Hellman, Philip Idone, Joseph Jonas, Saul Klausner, Rose Levine, Warren Levy, Harry Matlis, Edna Moody, Max Panitz, Edna Peak, Lee Harris Pomeroy, Katie Press, Dora Feit Riss, Fanny Hannah Rosenthal, Ola Ruben Auerbach, Marilyn Rudley, Mary Hertz Singer, Max Susser, Sandra Tepper, Herbert Tempowski, Ben Woloshin, and Sigmund Zimmerman. And if there's anyone else that we didn't mention and you'd like to mention their names as well, you're welcome to add them to the chat or simply to hold your loved ones in your heart as I invite the mourners to join me on page 598 as we recite the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, b'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabba mevarach le'alam u'li'amei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbahar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudsha b'richu. Le'ila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha. May every one of their memories be for a blessing. If you're still standing at home, please be seated. And Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's now my honor and my privilege to welcome up one of my dear friends, a member of our board, and all around just truly wonderful person, Marilyn Liu. And Marilyn, don't worry, we're going to add you to the spotlight here. I'm going to ask you to unmute, and hopefully you can hit that, and then we'll see what happens. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so Marilyn, all you. No, you're great.
Shabbat morning service will be live streamed tomorrow at 10 a.m. Join us on our website, YouTube channel, or Facebook page. Archived versions will be available for viewing shortly after each service ends. Then join us for Torah study at 12 p.m. with Rabbi Dan. The Women's Rosh Chodesh group will meet this Sunday at 2 p.m. Niddah Mitzvah is on Monday at 11:30. Hebrew School is at 4 p.m. The Social Justice Committee will meet virtually at 5 p.m. and Musar Practice is at 7 p.m. Another Schmooze with Myra and Shelley is on Tuesday at 5 p.m. You can check in with Temple Friends for an informal chat. Rabbi Dan's class on Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel and the Prophets is on Wednesday at 12 p.m. and the B'nai Mitzvah class meets at 4 p.m. Join us for a celebration of Purim on Thursday at 6 p.m., starting with a reprise of Purim Star Wars and our outrageously funny Jewish humor group, followed by an engaging reading of the Megillah. Grab your grogers and join in on the merrymaking. And don't forget to pick up a bag of hamantashen at the temple parking lot this Sunday from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. On Friday at 9 a.m., Rabbi Dan teaches his class on Pirkei Avot. Check out these and all other programs in our weekly e-blasts and on our website calendar. If you're not getting our emails, please let the temple office know. We welcome you to join after services tonight for a virtual Oneg Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and stay safe.
Shabbat Shalom, Marilyn. You did great. You did great. How did it feel?
I'm good. Thank you.
Good. That's the way it should feel. You did great. You did great. And it's great to see the pictures in the background too, which is lovely. All right. Please give Roger a big hug from us. Give everybody, the extended family, our love. And thank you for doing this, Marilyn. It was really great.
You're very
All right. Good Shabbos. We'll let you go back to your seat in the pews, as it were. And Cantor, you got a closing song for us tonight?
Yes, I do. And I believe you can follow on page 180. Yehu leratzon imrefi veyon libi Yehu leratzon imrefi veyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri velo ani, Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri velo ani. Go inside your heart, just be. Go inside your heart and see what it wants, what it needs, what it yearns when you breathe. Go inside your heart and see. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be kind, be true. May they be acceptable to you. Oh, my rock, and my redeemer.
It was beautiful. I'll join or ask you to join with me if you like. We're on page 123. Again, if you have grape juice or wine or anything, please join me again on page 123. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzav b'hanu. V'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon inchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh zecher letziat mitzrayim ki v'hanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat kodshecha V'ahava uvratzon inchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Amen. Okay. L'chaim, everybody. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom to everybody still watching on the stream. At this point, we'll say a good night to all of you. And Shabbat Shalom. And before I forget, a happy almost birthday for my father, which is tomorrow. So we'll wish Peter Geffen a happy birthday, celebrating somewhere, maybe watching this right now. So everybody's clapping for you, Saba. You'll see. All right. So